we should be live.
All right, thank you, Chris. All right, Council, it's 5 p.m. and I will call the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee meeting to order on November 4, 2020, 1 week away from Remembrance Day. Today, we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. The Deputy Mayor has sent his regrets. So I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda. It is moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Comey that the content of the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee agenda for November 4, 2020 be adopted as amended. And the addition is C 2020-15 procedural bylaw amendments, regular meeting dates for council and standing committees, which has been referred from the November 2nd Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee meeting. Council, are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Are there any declarations tonight? Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have received advice from the Integrity Commissioner that as a member of the Curling Club, I am required to declare a conflict of interest on any matters of a financial nature concerning the club. So I'll be recusing myself from the part of the meeting when the Curling Club will be making its presentation. And I will also be recusing myself from any motions or discussions or votes that arise from that presentation.
Right. Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Any other declarations, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that situation as we progress through the agenda, please let us know. And that brings us to item 4, which is deputations. We have 3 tonight. The first deputation is Collingwood Climate Action Team, upcoming plans and partnerships. And we have Dave Orling here on behalf of the Collingwood Climate Action Team. Sarah, can you please bring Mr. Orling in for us?
Certainly, Your Worship. I believe he is in our meeting. Mr. Orling, are you present?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah and Mayor Saunderson. Apologies for that. I've used Zoom a lot lately, but sometimes finding the unmute button is can be a challenge. But could you just confirm that you can hear me okay? And if you wouldn't mind putting up the first slide for me, I would appreciate that.
Yes, we can hear you well, Dave, and we've all fallen prey to the mysterious unmute button. So go right ahead, please.
Okay, thanks very much.
10 minutes, Dave. 10 minutes.
Yeah, so my name's Dave Orling, and I'm one of the founding members of the Collingwood Climate Action Team, and also the lead for our community engagement group. Next slide, please. On behalf of our organization, I'd like to thank the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee for this opportunity. My objective is to provide you with an overview of our recent activities, outline some of our partnerships we've been working on, and highlight some of our plans for the coming year. Next slide, please. CCAT aims to make a positive contribution to our community and help Collingwood make its contribution as part of the global community towards our collective responsibility to mitigate climate change. Our mission and values have helped guide us as we have started this work. We have tried to work cooperatively with others while speaking up respectfully when necessary. We've tried to be bold, knowing that if we are to make a difference, there will be critics. Next, please. From the perspective of a citizens group formed to pursue a specific cause, we recognize that we are very fortunate that the important groundwork for taking action on climate change has already been laid by the efforts of town staff and council. I don't need to review all that work for you, as you know it better than we do, but I'll point out that there wasn't enough room on this slide to include the cycling plan, the energy conservation and demand management plan, the urban forest management plan, and even the economic development action plan, which includes promoting both innovation and sustainability in the business community. Collingwood is well positioned to be a leader in acting against climate change and the example for others to follow. Next slide, please. Our group has faced challenges similar to other organizations in the past year and have had to adapt, and we've done so successfully. We have continued to meet virtually with our working groups, focusing on specific climate-related topics. Our bi-monthly meetings have provided opportunities for input from a broader audience and offered speakers and presentations on such topics as electric vehicles, home energy use, and the health effects of climate change. We've distributed a monthly communique to share information on CCAT activities, as well as the work being done by other groups we are partnering with. Next slide, please. We'll be launching a new website in the next 2 weeks and have been active on social media and with submissions to local media, which have been effective in stimulating some important discussions. Some of our members have also been raising awareness and providing insight via personal blogs and e-newsletters. One of our group's objectives has been to apply a climate lens to issues to ensure that consideration is given to what is not necessarily seen, and we hope that in the future this will become the norm. We've offered our perspective, including when public input is being sought by the town. A considerable amount of time and effort has been spent by our Carbon Conversations group developing and piloting educational workshops tailored to residents in our area, and I'll expand on that more in just a few minutes. Also of note, we have achieved not-for-profit status, which will provide us the ability to apply for grants to support our work, and we've become more organized in terms of our governance as a result. Next slide, please. Building relationships and partnerships has been very important to us. Although restrictions on in-person encounters set that work back last spring, we've made some important connections and have been able to expand our networks as things move virtually. We've been working with other climate action groups in the Southern Georgian Bay area, sharing ideas and resources. We've been collaborating with the Environment Network to help engage the youth in our area. Just Recovery Simcoe is an organization aiming to connect a broad range of groups, including climate action groups such as ours, who are focused on transitioning to a better way of living after COVID. Our members are involved with the Institute for South Georgian Bay, contributing to how we think and do. We've made contacts at Sustainable Severn Sound and Climate Action in Dufferin, who are both progressing with the FCM Partners in Climate Protection Program. We're very excited with opportunities forthcoming with Protect Our Winters Canada, who have the marketing savvy to capture the attention of a large segment of our outdoor activity-focused population. They will be joining us and presenting at our next general meeting to speak about the power in numbers, and I know you will be hearing more about their work soon. Next slide, please. So what do we have planned in the near future? As some of you are already aware, we will be starting our educational workshops next week. Looking for a low carbon future will prepare individuals to take action to reduce their climate footprint, recognizing that solutions will be different for different people and that we must find sustainable actions that will also improve life for individuals and the community. Addressing the elephant in the room will help individuals frame conversations in a way that leads to finding common ground. We look forward to being able to provide these and other workshops in 2021, both locally and regionally, thanks to the ability to have virtual participation. Next slide, please. We've also been working with Project Neutral, who have been instrumental in successful projects in Toronto, Guelph, London, and the Waterloo region, developing practical ways for individuals and groups to measure their carbon footprints and find actionable ways to reduce them. As is well known, what gets measured gets done. We are a supporting partner with their grant application to the federal government's Climate Action and Awareness Fund, with the goal of adapting their climate calculator to reflect more rural realities and the vision that work done in Collingwood can be applied to small urban and rural communities elsewhere. Discussions have included involving students at CCI and the Gaia Club with data analysis, providing an opportunity for local youth to contribute while learning. We also plan on continuing to collaborate, write, meet, march, and share our ideas with our members as well as our broader community. We will plan and support activities that take a proactive approach to climate change, including active transportation initiatives. And I'll note the fantastic work the Trails and Active Transportation Advisory Committee has been undertaking and the progressive signal that change in their focus sends to the community. Continuing to give input with a climate lens when the opportunity arises and grow our partnerships with other organizations in the town of Collingwood whenever possible are ongoing priorities for us. Group members will also continue to take active steps themselves by examining where their food comes from, how they source their energy, and how they get around, so that we can learn from personal experience and be better prepared to share those lessons. We know that Collingwood has a willingness to be innovative, and we see that as fertile ground to build momentum and capacity. That's what we hope to do, and I would miss an opportunity if I didn't speak to what we would like to see from our council in the town. Continuing to lead by example is crucial. If you could just go to the next slide, please, Sarah. And I'll express on behalf of the Climate Action team our appreciation for your participation in some of our activities. We ask for support for Car Free Day, and Mayor Saunderson and others enthusiastically joined in. Our upcoming workshops have been well received, and I've been told that the registration list includes some of you listening to me tonight. Director of Planning Adam Farr presented to our members regarding the official plan update and some of the progressive planning approaches being considered. Coordinator of Public Works and Transit, Chris Wisniak, will attend and present at our general meeting November 26th. Engagement goes both ways. Action on one side definitely leads to action on the other, and those efforts are noticed, so thank you. We know that your inboxes are full, but hope you will read our communique when it comes out each month. Our group recognizes that there are immediate priorities for council and town staff to address, but want to emphasize that sustainability requires an environment and climate that has the ability to sustain the population. Initiating the FCM PCP framework will require committing some resources to achieve. A climate action specialist on town staff will be able to coordinate activities, seek additional funding sources, and allow Collingwood to develop a climate action plan as outlined in the CDSP. We would encourage you to consider this as an investment that is needed to address a liability that will only continue to grow. For Collingwood to be a UN Sustainable Development Goals town pioneer, we need to set an example for others to follow. Thanks very much for your attention. The Collingwood Climate Action Team looks forward to continuing our efforts to make a positive contribution to life in Collingwood and continuing to work with you as we go forward. Next slide, please. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I thank you for the time.
There you go. That mute button caught me too. So thank you very much for that presentation, Dave. And because this is a Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting, we will open the floor to our audience to see if they have any questions or comments with respect to the presentation we just received. Sarah, I will look to you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment?
Yes, we do. Your Worship, we have Matthew Pretty.
Thank you. If you can put him on, please.
All right, I believe he should be able to speak.
Matthew, are you able to hear us?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So go ahead, Matthew. A couple quick comments about the presentation we just received or questions?
Yes. I'd like to frame the conversation that the gentleman just proposed. I was talking with Bob Madigan today at his private shop, and I was saying to him that there's a lot of damage associated with climate change. How do we frame to ask town council, the departments, the province, the federal government about the damage that climate change creates, such as Harbour Road continually getting broken up by water and ice and everything, and the need to put down more salt and sand? How do we raise money based upon what the inflection is from climate change? And I'd like to propose the word is damage. Damage to our roads, damage to the air quality, the water quality from, big storms that, plastic getting into the waterways, how the importance of those vacuum trucks are key. But I'd also like to propose to the person to suggest that we teach students and the general public about growing a portion of food on private property, on public property, like the new park over on 2nd Street, that we participate more in hands-on activities like growing food. But we also need to frame the statement as climate change does damage. And that's where we need to raise the money. And shuttle buses that can go electric, the Red Cross, the on-demand system, smaller town buses. These are things that I see since also being a participant of the Gaia program at the high school and other things. We need to go smaller, more efficient, hands-on, away from technology biologically, but at the same time, what damage is happening that we need to fix things with technology. I'd like to propose that, here comes winter in about 10 days' time, and we need to be ready for new damage by storms and problems of the like. That's my comment tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. And you cover a lot of territory in there, and certainly looking for government funding for shoreline protection and plastics programs are all things this council is looking at. But Dave, you did talk about collaboration and partnerships, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the education piece or other ways of reaching out for programs that might tap into some of the aspects like education that Matthew mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Saunderson, and thanks, Matthew, for those comments. You know, it's really difficult to convince, I think, ourselves that climate change is the root cause of some of these issues. These things creep up on us insidiously. I think certainly if we all look back on the way things were a number of years ago, and I mentioned the Protect Our Winters Canada group that's releasing a report that you'll see soon that looks at snow days on the ski hills, in particular in this area with Craigley Ski Hill. You know, we certainly can see that changes have happened over a number of years. I think that it's important to recognize, as has been pointed out, that these things can end up being liabilities to the town, and the municipality can end up bearing the brunt of those costs going forward, and taxpayers end up having to pay for those costs going forward as well. You know, certainly I think awareness is part of the issue. Some of the workshops that we're proposing to do, I think will start opening up some of those conversations. And I think once that gets out into the public sphere a little bit more, we'll have some more buy-in from people and possibly some more ideas on how we can address those kinds of things.
Thank you. Sarah, is there anyone else from the gallery that would like to comment or ask questions on this presentation?
No, Your Worship, there is not.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll turn to Council. Councillor, any questions or comments for Mr. Orland? Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we on council could be apprised of the dates and times of these events when they are taking place. I certainly would be interested in participating.
Dave, are you able to tell us when your programs are, or just undertake to email Town Hall, and we'll make sure that information gets distributed?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Saunderson. So the plan going forward is that the monthly communique that we're putting together will be sent out to all the councillors and also CAO Skinner. We're happy to send it out to other people as well, and that will include various dates and times for presentations and other events and monthly meetings. And certainly, if you can share that with other people and they're interested in getting on our mailing list, the more that we have on our mailing list, the better. So thanks for that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Orling. I'm wondering, well, first, thank you for that presentation and all the work you're doing in the community. It is always wonderful to hear that you're engaging our youth, because we know they're so passionate, and that's exactly who we want to be reaching. My question is, I'm wondering if the group has found any synergy with Pollinate Collingwood. They've come before council a couple times, and so there's Pollinate Collingwood, and if I follow it correctly, they've also launched a new initiative asking the town, which council approved, to become a part of B City Canada. And I was just wondering if there's any partnerships or relationships there.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wouldn't say that we have a formal partnership with their group, but I would say that I do have a pollinator garden at my own house, and we've, you know, I think as individuals been supporting the work that they're doing, and I think it's a great project and it's very exciting, and certainly, you know, it just highlights that there are a number of people working on this issue on a number of different fronts. And we've had lots of great organizations like the Nature League and the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust as well that have been around here a long time. And I think that just speaks well for our environment. I think going forward, yes, we will cross-pollinate with them in some way. But yeah, our gardens look better this year, and I expect they'll look better next year as a result of their work.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. Just really a comment to say what a great presentation it was, and I couldn't agree more with the town getting on with the FCM PCP framework and all the resources that are available there, and that maybe through to our CAO Skinner, it might be appropriate at a meeting that works in the future that we can have an update as to where we're at in that process, because I know I've heard it mentioned, but it would be nice to have an update.
Thank you, Councillor. Duly noted. I see the CAO nodding her head. Are there any other questions council? Seeing none, Dave, thank you very much to you and your, oh, I see Sonia Skinner has her hand up. Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I did want to say that we've appreciated CCAT's participation with staff and some of their ideas and how enthusiastic they've been. And it's been a big support to us with Council's declaration of the climate change emergency last year. And I think that Collingwood being, I think, a leading edge and somewhat unusual municipality, that we try to form we challenge ourselves to form some unusual partnerships with some strong stakeholders like CCAT and Pollinate Collingwood, where we take a look at what we're doing, whether it could be collaborations on green roofs or solar, or promoting what, for example, CCAT or Pollinate Collingwood are doing within our municipality, so that we can get the best of all worlds. I know that one thing Council has been interested in is a benchmarking of greenhouse gases in the municipality, and Councillor Jeffrey had just mentioned that it's one of the key first steps in the FCM program that we've entered. And CCAT's also quite interested in doing that, and actually has been moving forward and asking the town for some of our information, which we're very happy to provide. And I think that there's a collaboration in there that we certainly on the staff side would like to do with David and the CCAT group. And I suspect there's a number of applications for funding that's available to the town and or CCAT, upon which we could actually collaborate as well. We're trying to find our way forward in this new world where we're implementing a program or service related to being a really green town, and we're trying to find that way forward, potentially in new methods. So it's great to hear this, and I would like to express the staff's interest in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And thank you, David, to you and your team at the CCAT for all that you've done in raising awareness in our community. And we look forward to working with you and looking at some funding opportunities to push this agenda in our community. So thank you. And that brings us to item 4.2, which is the Collingwood Curling Club loan payment deferral. And we have Bob Riches on behalf of the Curling Club, and Councillor McLeod has now left us. So, Sarah, if you can bring Bob in, please.
Certainly, Your Worship. I believe he should be in the meeting now.
Hello?
Hello,
Oh,
Bob, we can hear you.
okay.
How are you tonight?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Good. Okay, go ahead. You've got the floor and you have 10 minutes.
Okay. I'll put the first slide, please. Okay, so my name is Bob Riches. I'm president of the Collingwood Curling Club. I'd like to just go over what we have been for some of you who don't know us, what we've done because of COVID, and the request. So next slide, please. So we have been a part of the Collingwood since 1881. We have generally over 550 members. The number varies sometimes, but in the last few years, very committed. We are not the biggest curling club in the province. There are a few bigger, not many, but we are the busiest curling club in the province. And we're also very committed to community support. For those of you who are maybe not aware, we offer free wheelchair curling on Sundays. We have a Special Olympians that curl on Wednesdays. There's about 25. And we have a school program where grade 7 and grade 8 students from every elementary school are offered free 4 days of Learn to Curl every year. And we also have a corporate league where corporations are given space to compete against each other, which is quite a fun thing. In fact, they're playing tonight. So we also so we have some fundraising bonspiels, which are Saturday events. And the two biggest are the Breaking Down Barriers and both the hospice, which we raised usually around $15,000 annually. And we have been partners with the town since I've been here, certainly before me. We rent the facility for 6 months of the year. We work with the town. Nathan, who is the manager of the site at Central Park is, we talk to them on a regular basis. So, but overall, we are a not-for-profit volunteer club, and except for a few people, everybody who works there or involved is a volunteer. Next slide, please. So COVID has caused us to redo a lot of things. So we had to, as a result of that, reduce our space from 6 curling sheets of ice to 5, which gives us more space, more social distancing. We've also had to reduce the times to separate the entrances and the exits. So rather than having 5 events a day, we now have 4. We've had to significantly increase our cleaning, both the labor and the cost of materials. And we did this, so we had to sort of conform with the guidelines from the Canadian Curling Association, the Ontario Curling Association. The town supervisor looked at our protocols and they made comments. We incorporated all those comments. And finally, last week, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit approved, after an inspection, our protocols. Next slide, please. So as a result of that, our membership is down from 350 odd to just around 360. We've had to reduce the number of leagues. Cannot have bonspiels based on recommendations of both the health unit and also the Ontario Curling Association. We've had significantly higher cleaning costs. So we budgeted for about $25,000 for cleaning in the middle of August. We now know it's going to be a lot higher than that, maybe $40,000. So essentially, we're looking at losing money. Next slide, please. So if you look at our financial overview, our income comes from essentially 2 sources. By and large, it's the membership, which is there as $105,000, and we have a bar, which we estimate will be about $15,000 in revenue. Our expenses are around $150,000. That is, we have rent, which we pay to the town, a loan, which we have as a result of a major $1 million renovation about 5 years ago. We have ice making costs and we have cleaning costs. So we're going to lose money. And even though we have a bit of a reserve, the reserve is, we know that coming down the pipe, we have the building will have to have a roof replacement, which will probably be part of some of the costs that come to us. And we know that there's the curling stones themselves, which are fairly expensive, will have to be replaced in a few years. So we're setting aside money for that. So next slide, please. So we're asking you if you could defer our loan payment for 1 year. This essentially will not cost any money. It just means that we'll just have to, we'll still pay the 20. I think the loan is 20 equal payments. We'd like to pay 20 payments, but we'd like to not pay any this year if we could. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Bob. And before I go to council, I will first go ask Clerk Almas if we have anyone in the audience that has any questions or comments on the presentation.
Certainly, Your Worship, just for clarification, regarding delegations during deputations, generally questions would be saved to the end unless council is going to make a final motion on a matter that's being requested. So if that's the case, either way, there is no attendee interested in speaking at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I'll look to council. Are there any questions or comments on the presentation? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I think that it would be important to refer this to the budget discussion so that we can consider it within the entire budget impacts. As we know, our COVID money's gone back into the utility sales reserve, and but I think it's important for us to continue to have things for people to do during this time and the things they can do safely. I hope we can find a way to help. So I think the budget is the proper place for it.
I agree with that comment, and I think it's appropriate to refer it to staff through the CAO, as we have been doing with all our requests, so that we can look at these in a global picture, I think. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Riches? Seeing none. Bob, thank you very much for taking time tonight.
Thanks.
And I hope you have a good season.
Thank you.
Take care.
Do your best. Thanks.
And this brings us to our last deputation, 4.3, municipal taxes and spending, and we have Tim Fryer here. Sarah, can you let Mr. Fryer in, please?
Yes, Your Worship, he'll be joining us by phone.
Okay. Mr. Fryer, can you hear us? Any luck there, Sarah?
We are trying to get him in.
Mayor Saunderson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I had the same problem with the mute button.
All right.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson and members of council, for providing me the opportunity to further address the matter of taxes and spending with you today. Last week when I requested to delegate, I had expected that there would be some major budget discussion today. As such, I wanted the 10 minutes of a delegator, but may not need all that as there aren't any formal reports on the agenda today. I will put some points forward on to council now, though, for consideration during your upcoming 2021 budget discussions. I continue to be compelled to address council on this matter because the 25% growth rate over the past 5 years, leading to 2019's $34.4 million tax burden, can only be described as excessive. It is evidence that supports my contention. It is evident that supports my contention from 2016 onward that each of the annual expenditure budgets were also excessive. I won't be going into minute detail on the briefs and associated tables I have already provided you with on this matter. But in those details, I believe I've provided you with solid evidence that the past zero-based budgets result in an overtaxing of Collingwood taxpayers by roughly 10% per annum. I have said previously that I understand that the resulting surpluses are supposed to flow into the reserves. But I have shown council in my evidence that a shortcoming of having large ongoing surpluses is that it leads to excesses in spending. That is evident from the two tables I provided on key cost drivers, most specifically general government and labor expense. To demonstrate this further, I use general government costs per household as a logical comparator to compare between our neighboring municipalities because they are under similar population growth pressures. I would point out, though, that there appears to be an inconsistency with the Collingwood information now that I have seen the actual number for households in the 2019 FIR. It indicates only 2% of growth in Collingwood households from 2016 to 19, while the town of Blue Mountains is a more logical 7%. It still is a case, though, that Collingwood service costs per taxpayer have grown much more rapidly than our neighbours during this period. Council needs to determine mechanisms to reverse this trend in the 2021 budget. Other evidence I provided shows there are inequities on how taxes are applied in my own neighborhood compared to other similar situations, indicating an extremely unfair impact. I do understand how the taxes are applied, but I don't understand how council and staff could think that this is a fair application. I believe there is a simple step that can be taken to help reduce the delta to make it fairer, but we'll await staff's input about it first, as they may have a solution. I have put forward to council in my submissions that reestablishing an independent third-party review must be done to achieve the level of transparency you are seeking. It will also reduce the need for members of the public to have to search out the details on provincial websites. Annual reviews will also identify excesses, and then these can be specifically targeted for improvement during budget setting. In this same vein of increasing transparency, I continue to maintain that there should simply be a summary page at the end of the municipal budget, that it is the totals of all the business case pages within. I didn't get support for this while on council, but hopefully now that I have shown that labor costs are growing at 8.5% per annum over the past 5 years, Council will recognize that summary detail is necessary for appropriate public presentation. In summary, I respectfully submit to Council that one of the major benefits from a community experienced in growth Collingwood should be reduced taxes. There are many more taxpayers that should be only bringing on incremental costs, and that should lower the average mill rate. These annual surpluses are because that benefit is not being transferred to us. So with the remaining time I am prepared to respond to any questions Council may have from my input I've given you.
Thank you for your brevity. Sarah, do we have anyone in the audience that would like to comment on the presentation?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Matthew Pretty.
Matthew, go ahead.
Okay, I have an idea here, and I wonder what kind of increased costs we've been seeing. I know the budget's underway right now, and Mr. Fryer, as a councillor of past municipal government, would know very well that spending and taxes and the costs of living are on the rise. That's why those sales were made of the airport, of the power board, the municipal power company. You know, these key elements, and this also reflects our spending to make sure that we're giving residents proper opportunity for see the investment unfold, such as I believe we need to have more bathrooms available through the shoreline for the residents and visitors. We need more bathrooms installed. And as a general way of saying, hey, taxpayers and residents and renters and visitors and people, what are we doing to accommodate you as an individual, as a family, as a possible investor in this town? So I think we need to get smaller buses. We need to be more efficient. I'd like to ask Mr. Fryer, what costs does he see that are overspending of that tax base? What are the departments that he sees and the costs that are being overspent? Is it the police force? Is it road improvements? Is it what is it? Like, let's hear the list of what the overspending is. Over to Mayor Saunderson, to past Councillor Fryer.
Thank you for that, Matt. I know maybe you two can connect offline and have an excellent discussion on that. Is there a short answer to that, Mr. Fryer?
I think I can do that, Mayor Saunderson. In my mention of things, I talk about the general government expense, which of course is generally administration costs, and that's the one I've been focused on. So that's the one that I provided the extra information to you and to the other members of council for your consideration. And Matthew's quite correct. Budget process is underway right now. So I envision that there'll be sometime in the near future a specific budget meeting. And that was what I was alluding to in the beginning of my, these are just points I was bringing forward to council for their consideration leading up to that more verbose discussions that may happen during the actual budget discussions. So I did mention about the rising cost of labor. So that would be one specific one that I've spoken to that would answer Matthew's question directly. But as I said, this was anticipating that I was providing information in advance of your specific budget discussions.
Very good. And thank you. We have that information now. Council. Sarah, I'll just, before I move on, is there anyone else from the audience that has any questions?
No, Your Worship, there is not.
Good, thank you. I'll turn it over to Council. Council, any questions for Mr. Fryer? Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Fryer, one of the issues that you raised was the inequality of your property taxes on your home or in your neighborhood compared to others. And I'm aware that the cornerstone of our entire property tax assessment system is to ensure that properties are assessed, and that's their value, equitably with similar real property in their neighborhood. This is something that comes out of the Assessment Act and is something not within the control of the town, but within the control of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. So my question is whether you've been in touch with the assessors at MPAC to discuss the valuation of your property to solve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fryer?
Through you, Mayor Saunderson, to Councillor Hamlin. Yes, I have done that. Of course, that is certainly a step that needs to be taken. And what I'm simply saying to council is, I'm not sure why we would be paying 2.5 times the same tax somebody in an intersection in the center part of Collingwood is paying, especially when we don't get a number of the services that we're paying for in our capital charges. So again, tonight was meant to provide information to council. I hadn't anticipated getting into minute detail. I can if you would like. But my intention was, after providing this information, I will be contacting CAO Skinner. She sent me an email with some information. I'm going to be responding to that. And I recognize how taxes are calculated. I'm just trying to say, if you look at this, you got to believe that it's an unfair situation, because we're not getting the services that many other areas are. And we're on the extreme outskirts of Collingwood, and that's one of the reasons. So I know I haven't answered your question fully, Councillor, but as I said, my anticipation was that this would be more or less an information brief I would give to you to go with the other ones that I have. And I'm prepared to have a more thorough discussion when you have your actual budget meeting. Is that okay as a response?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor Saunderson, I just really wanted to leave it that the fact that your property may be paying higher taxes than somewhere else in town is not something in this town's control. Every property is taxed based on its value at the same rate. So MPAC has decided that your property is worth more. And if that is an issue for you, you should be taking it up with them if you think your property is worth less than others in the center of town. But truly, that's not something for us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
If I could just respond to that, Mayor Saunderson. I understand all that. I'm very familiar with all that. But that's why I said I do believe there's a simple solution that can reduce the delta, but I wasn't prepared to get into the detail of that tonight. As I said, I was going to be touching base with staff again, and I am awaiting to see what the staff say when they present their budget.
Well, I think you can take it as a given, Mr. Fryer, that staff aren't going to recommend that we change the mill rate and the impact system. So if that's your issue, I think Councillor Hamlin is entirely correct. You ought to take that up with your MPP, and Mr. Wilson has an office right here in town. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's not what I would be proposing.
Well, that's what I'm telling you is going to be the system, because we operate within a legislative framework, and it's been made very clear. So I appreciate you may feel that, and we're happy to hear your comments about the budget and things that we can change, but we're not looking to change the impact assessments.
And I wouldn't be requesting that.
Very good. All right, we'll look forward to receiving your comments.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
All right, Council. And this takes us to item 5, which is the consent agenda. And it is moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Comey that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by the standing committee, be received. And there's 2 items. 5.1, John Megarry, letter re CCS 2020-7, Foundation Collingwood, and 5.2, Ontario Energy Board, Enbridge Gas Inc., proposed natural gas rate increases. And are there any items actually that just you want to comment on And if you want to pull something for action, then that would be separate from the vote. So any commentary before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. And that brings us then to our staff reports, item 6 and 6.1, T 2020-14. Councillor Dory, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did wish to pull one item, item 5.1, Mr. Megarry's letter, please, if I could.
Yes, is this for an action item or just comment?
It's for questions for staff in regard to some of the questions that Mr. Megarry has posed, which I'm assuming if he has these questions about how it would work, then I'm sure there are others in the community that would also have questions.
Okay, I had intended that before I called the vote, but I will allow you to put the questions forward. And certainly, you know that this is an item that we did receive a report on, and we sent it back to you with the executive director for more work, and we'll come up for more discussion. But I will let you ask your questions. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm just wondering, and I'm not sure whether this would be Director Culver or our treasurer that would respond, but the question was posed how the town would make a commitment in the same year that the fund is created. There would be a portion of it that would also be subject to matching with private citizen donations. But the question was, how does the fund grow after that year? So you have the town's cash injection, you have donations from members of the public that would be matched by council. What happens after that? How does it continue to grow?
Executive Director Culver.
Thank you, Your Worship. So with the Community Foundation, an endowment builds on its own interests. So if the $3 million cash injection by the council plus the $1 million incentive was matched, and we had a nest egg of $5 million each year, you'd be able to pull a portion off of the interest that it was generated by investing the endowment in order to be able to spend it on granting under CRA rules.
Okay, thank you. May I continue?
Go ahead, follow up.
Yes, please, thank you. So after the initial year, is the fund dependent upon additional private donations, or can it subsist on its own investment income?
Okay, well, I'll put that through to Director Culver, but I think the investment income each year is what the foundation uses to pay out to its various recipients. And the fund, to grow its capital, would require further donations of capital from private businesses or private individuals. But I'll ask Executive Director Culver to expand on that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So a portion of the earning can be reinvested, in addition to also providing for granting. It's not permitted that the nucleus of the funding be touched under CRA regulations. You're only allowed to dispense so much of any given year. So yeah, there isn't a requirement for more town funding or further donations by the community. But as Mayor Saunders had said, one of the ways that a community foundation can grow is through fundraising or through donations from others who wish to put stock in the endowment.
Okay, thank you. And at any time, could the town back out? Or once a foundation is established that is independent of the town, can the town at any time ever remove its initial investment in the foundation, or is that monies then committed forever?
Executive Director.
So through your worship, the intention of the recommendation provided by staff was that the money would be invested forever. I'm not aware of mechanisms by which a town or a benefactor may withdraw, the donated funds. I could research that, but that's not something that I did understand during the research for the report.
Okay, thank you. And then just finally, there will be additional opportunity for public to feedback and provide comment on this proposal.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's in
Great.
the works, and we'll be coming back to council as part of our discussions about what to do with our legacy funds from the asset sales.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So item 6.1, T 2020-14, 2021 fees and charges. And we have a presentation. So I will look to Clerk, or Mike, you've joined us.
And actually, through your worship, I will just be speaking to this this report.
Okay.
So through your worship, this is a standard report that we require on an annual basis. And it's to provide the fees and charges for the services we provide to the community. Our normal procedure for this is to provide a list of the existing fees to department heads that were approved for 2020. These fees are indexed at a CPI rate. We used the June 2020 CPI year-over-year change, which was 0.7%. Departments are then asked to review this and add any new charges they wish, as well as provide us with a higher or lower rate if they feel the CPI factor is not appropriate. Following that, they return the fees to the finance department, where we compile them and then bring them forward in bylaw form for council to approve. And I wanted to note in the fee listing, there is a typo in the section E. It's on page 20 of the fee listing. Under the red line of revision application fee, it is actually $2,620, not $26,200. So we've made that correction, and the report that will be brought forward to council will reflect that correction.
I think Dave Orling has done something to me. I can't hit the unmute button anymore. So thank you for that, Mike. And I will look to Clerk Almas to see if there's any questions or comments about the fee report before I open it up to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, if there's a few attendees that are joining us by telephone, if you wish to speak, please press *9 to raise your hand and we would unmute you, or press the raise your hand feature if you're on a computer or smartphone device. And it doesn't look like there's anybody wishing to participate in this conversation.
Okay, thank you. That *9 thing kind of reminds me of TV Ontario. Do you think we can have a star something to get pledges for the town? I think that would be a good way to raise the fees and services. So, council, are there any questions for the treasurer on the report we just received? Councillor Doherty, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question in regard to the proposed planning fees, and this relates to a observation that I made some weeks ago, that while our planning fees are fixed for various interests, be they developers or businesses coming into our community or expanding in our community, they tend not always to be proportionate to the value of the business that is making the application. We are a community that is very dependent on small business. We have in fact been ranked as the #1 entrepreneurial community in Canada. Many of our businesses would have sales volumes in under $1 million, under $500,000, perhaps even under $250,000 a year. And yet they may, as an example, be facing fees for an official plan amendment with a zoning bylaw amendment of upwards of $11,000, and that's not including contingencies. Is there an opportunity for us to consider some sort of a scale for planning fees that acknowledges that all businesses are not the same size and acknowledges the value that we place on new small businesses coming into our community?
Mike, do you want to take that, or should Director Farr join us for this?
I would direct it to Director Farr first.
Okay.
And if,
Adam, go ahead.
Good evening, members of council, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Doherty. The current fee structure doesn't have scaling incorporated into to address the ability of applicants to pay the planning fees that we charge. Any applicant may approach council to seek a waiver of their fees. That responsibility does not currently lie in staff's control, but it does lie in council's control. As part of the 2021 budget proposal, staff have recommended a fee review of planning and engineering and building fees. That fee review would enable council to get a better grasp of what the total cost of processing planning applications is, and to consider if the fees for service are accurately scaled to the different proposals that we encounter. I can tell you now, though, that scanning fees across the South Georgian Bay area, Collingwoods are generally competitive. Fees are increasing as municipalities do seek full cost recovery. On a broader basis, Collingwood's fees are significantly low and are not currently collecting the full cost recovery for the service that's delivered. So there is a way in which one could view the current fees as having somewhat of a built-in subsidy, in that the taxpayer is funding a portion of the fees that are charged already. But as you accurately pointed out, it's general. It applies to everybody. It isn't targeted to someone's ability to pay.
Thank you, Adam. Any follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
No, thank you. So I will look forward to 2021 discussions and fee review. And I'm wondering, perhaps at some point, we may invite the Chamber of Commerce as an example, or perhaps the Economic Development Advisory Committee to participate in those presentations when they come forward to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, are there any other questions or comments before I call the vote on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And this brings us to item 6.2, C 2020-15, procedural bylaw amendments, regular meeting dates for council and standing committees. And this is the item that was deferred from the corporate community services meeting this past Monday. And I will look to Clerk Almas.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So we do have a brief presentation. Again, the report is pretty straightforward, so we'll just go right to the first slide. So when we are reviewing meeting schedules, we take in various items into consideration. Obviously, the frequency and time, the opportunity for the public to be informed of the information through the agenda package and be able to participate in the various meetings. We also take into items such as good governance to its stakeholders, being an accountable and transparent in the matters in which come before council and standing committee. Obviously, looking at the increase of efficiencies and managing corporate priorities, ensuring the council and the public have appropriate time to review this agenda material, and again, ability to for public participation in our meetings. Next slide. So looking at the meeting schedule challenges, so normally we are, council does look at the calendars every, usually November, it's presented. And we had actually a request for the committee and council calendar, and it brought a discussion up at department heads on whether there is further areas for improvements, because obviously the procedural bylaw is a living document, and we always feel that there could be ways that there could be efficiencies or improvement in effectiveness as we move forward. So one of the issues that we find ourselves in, especially on Mondays, is addressing last minute questions and requests that come in on meeting day. We find that we get a number of questions and people requesting information, whether it's the public or members of council coming in on Monday. So it makes Mondays a very busy meeting. So not to say that we wouldn't get last minute requests if we changed the other date, but we would definitely encourage that. Preparing for meetings immediately following a weekend or holiday becomes some challenges at times. Increase in addendums issued after an agenda has already been published. Managing meeting preparation and incoming questions of members and from council and the public to ensure that everyone's questions have been adequately addressed in time for the meeting. And compliance with the notice requirements for specific requests for staff reports and direction of staff when they're wanting to pull an item. So for example, right now we require 24 hours notice in advance. So before a council or standing committee meeting that falls on a Monday, that request has to come in on a weekend. So ensuring that we appropriately address any questions that come as a result of that is a challenge. And I will review, next slide, the various scenarios that were put forward. So obviously status quo. We've suggested holding meetings on Tuesdays with the exception of SIC, which would remain on a Wednesday. The third scenario is hold meetings on Wednesday with the exception of the SIC, which would move to the first Tuesday of the month. And then scenario number 4, which has been reviewed and recommended by department heads, and that is holding all meetings on Wednesdays with the SIC meeting commencing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the Standing Committee of Corporate Community Services would be held at 5 o'clock or immediately following the SIC meeting, should it run a little longer. Next slide. So again, these are just the details of when agendas would be issued. So for Monday meetings, agendas are issued on the Wednesday before. Wednesdays, Strategic Initiative Committee agendas packages are distributed on Fridays. All meetings start at 5. There's no meeting in August, and meetings bump to Tuesday when Monday is a holiday. So that's our current situation. The second scenario changes with respect to meetings of standing committees falling on a Tuesday. So if that's the case, the agendas would be issued on Thursday. Again, it would be the same time at 5 o'clock. No meetings in August. And Rogers has confirmed that they are not able to air live on Tuesday evening meetings. However, they would provide recorded versions of the meetings at alternate time slots throughout the week after the meeting. The third scenario is Wednesdays and Tuesdays. So Tuesdays becoming the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee meeting. Again, agendas would be issued Thursday. The Wednesday meeting agendas would be issued Friday, same as normal. And the same applies for the start time, no meetings in August. And again, Rogers is not able to air live on the Tuesdays, but they could for the Wednesday meeting. The fourth scenario, all meetings scheduled for the same day of the week. Meetings would start at 5 p.m. with the exception of SIC. All agendas issued on Thursday and no meetings in August. So that is the scenario. If we went with scenarios 2, 3, or 4, it does require a procedural bylaw amendment. Scenario 1, obviously it's status quo, so that would not require procedural bylaw amendment. And that's the presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. So I will ask you to canvass the audience before I go to council on this. Are there any questions or comments?
Certainly, Your Worship. It looks like Matthew Pretty would like to speak.
All right, Patrick.
All right, he should be joining us.
I was noticing this proposal. I'd say number 4 would be the best because The consistency for town council with these Zoom meetings for the energy of town council, the members, the departments, keeping it streamlined into one day midweek probably is a better idea, especially with the COVID. If people have to be somewhere on a Monday, if they have to be somewhere on a Tuesday, if they're dealing with work and personal family midweek, that's impressive. I would recommend the midweek schedule on behalf of what's going on now with the medical crisis and the respect of the energy of town council and staff. Please consider that because of people's time restrictions in town.
Thank you for that, Matt. Well, we will see how the vote comes out. And I will open it to council. What I propose to do is to sever the two. So first we will just vote on receiving the report. And because there's no identified option, we will deal with that issue separately. So I will put first the receiving the report on the table. And that is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Berman. That staff report C 2020-15 procedural bylaw amendments, regular meeting dates for council and standing committee meetings be received. Are there any questions or comments on that particular aspect of the motion before we move on to the various options? Seeing none, we'll call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And so what I will do now is open the floor to discussions, and then I will ask someone to put an option on the floor. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I don't want to speak to one of the options. I just wanted to make a few comments about the report in general, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
And specifically, I made a little list of what staff listed as the identified challenges. I think there were 7 or at least 7 that I've got listed. And aside from the one about increased addendums, I have one is preparation, one is contacting staff last minute, one is requesting staff reports and direction, requests for consent items, incoming questions from council, and compliance with the 24-hour notice. And to me, these are all things that are council's responsibility. They're within our control. And I've been through in detail, because this is something that is concerning to me, for lack of a better word, that these challenges have been identified. I've been through, and I'm not going to go into detail, I've been through the Municipal Act. I've been through council's code of conduct. I have been through the council staff relations policy. I have been through all of Clerk Almas's council corners. I have been through, again, the strategy corp presentation. We've been taught, coached over and over and over again not to do these things that are still rising as challenges. I don't know why it's happening. I don't have a question. I guess I do know why it's happening. I don't see any of these 4 recommendations solving the challenges that are in front of us. It's frustrating. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for those comments. Council, any other, does anyone want to put an item on the floor? Councillor Jeffrey? No, you just want to comment? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'll just comment for now. And I'm really trying to do this diplomatically and respectfully and calmly, but it's really difficult because as a business owner, when you run for something as significant as a position on council, you have to plan your life in this 4-year block. And it's just so difficult to keep bouncing it around. I pulled a few people to, because I just thought maybe I was being, I don't know, but I just said to people, what do you think about moving council off on Monday? Why? It's always been on Monday. I said, well, yeah. And, over whatever 13 years that I've served so far, I have not had 1 ounce of problem of meeting my deadlines or staff's deadlines. And I think without being inconveniencing staff and what it is. And I don't think our openness and our transparency is going to change whether it's Monday or Wednesday. I don't think holiday Mondays in the past, for me, I've made many recommendations to the meeting procedure. There's 4 extra Mondays in a year. So you can offset a lot of those by going to those 5th Mondays in a month. And I don't see that a problem to solve. And what this does effectively is put the scenarios, because I've run for FCM at your approval, those meetings run Tuesday to Friday. So I could made that decision knowing I could still participate in my community, which is really the most important, without and still do my FCM work. For example, the weeks of November 16th and the 23rd, whatever those Mondays are that week, I'm already booked for FCM 11 to 1 and 3 to 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the last Friday on the 26th. So even booking that 26th SIC meeting last minute into that week, I will find a way to accommodate it. But I just don't think, I think this is a change you would make before you had an election, where the people who were going to put their name forward knew what they were going to be responsible for and what they were going to have to do. I just find this, I just don't find it very respectful for us having run on something and having an understanding generally. Yes, we have to accommodate budget, and yes, we have to accommodate things like COVID and all those things that we have done. But I think there's a structure and it's there for a reason. And I think if you change it, you need to change it for the next group of 4. We all knew what we were getting into when we put our name down to run. So I'm finding this difficult, but like I say, I'm trying to stay respectful and diplomatic. But I don't see us, I really liked Councillor Berman's comment that I don't see us solving any of the things we're trying to solve with any one of the 4 proposals. I think it comes down to us as members of council to do our job. And so that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor McLeod, you had your card up?
Thanks. So my comments on this are that I want to be sensitive to my fellow council members and their needs. And I got into this knowing that we were meeting on Mondays, and I'm cool with Wednesday too, honestly, as somebody who's semi-retired. However, I think that I am very sensitive to what Councillor Jeffrey just said. And I also am sensitive to what Clerk Almas had to say, which was that this is a living document. And it's very living. We've already changed it 3 times. So, or 2 times, this would be the 3rd time. So in January of 2019, we decided to change to our recording of in-camera meetings, but accompanying that change, we changed the time frame for agendas arriving for the standing committees from 48 hours to 72 hours. And this time last year, we changed our timeline between when agendas would arrive and when meetings were to take place from 72 to 96 hours. So from 3 to 4 days. Now, if we go with the Wednesday option, it is being suggested that we will be receiving our agendas a full 6 days prior to our meetings, which seems to me a bit excessive from a staff preparation point of view. That seems like a really long lag time. And so the fact that this is coming to us now, a year after we already accommodated those who said they couldn't get their job done in time for the meetings previously, suggests to me that it might not solve the problem that we're having. And I wonder if we're not just going to have crazy wild Wednesdays as well for staff, in addition to the one that we've got crazy wild Mondays now. So I'm willing to try, but I am skeptical that it will alleviate or ameliorate the problem that we have. And so if we were to go with the recommended Wednesday option as recommended by staff, I would request that we not go with 144 hours of lead time between agendas arriving and meetings taking place, and go back at least to the 96 that we approved in January or in a year ago. So I would suggest that amendment if we were to go with recommendation 4, but if some other day is coming forward from this panel, I'm happy to consider that as well.
Okay, thank you. We haven't yet had an option put on the floor. I see Councillor Madigan and then Councillor Hamler.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson, and I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm going to speak to the consistency, and I would be happy to move scenario 4. For the last 6 years, I, as well as other councillors, have rearranged their schedule when meetings pop up, and I find it really hard to do that. In fact, I had to close my store early today. I work Tuesdays and Wednesdays in one of my businesses. And when meetings come up, I have to choose to close said business because I can't put my staff at the call of council like I am. I really loved Councillor McLeod's comment. So keeping in mind that if we did do scenario 4, I would move that all questions would have to be in Monday by noon. And if they're not, well, they're not. And so that would hopefully alleviate a crazy Wednesday meeting. And that would give staff time to have them answered maybe by 24 hours or 36 hours later, so that all the questions could be answered by Tuesday at 6 p.m. I think we should focus on the consistency for the people in Collingwood and watching at home, and this would still be available for us to broadcast on Rogers Community Television, and I think it would give it would help me out a fair bit. I'm happy to stay on Mondays, but I can move that all meetings are on Mondays or all meetings on Wednesdays. We can't have it Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Let's give the people what they want. They want one day. So if it's every Monday, let them tune in every Monday. If it's every Wednesday, let them tune in every Wednesday. But the last minute questions have to stop, and we have to put a time limit on it. If the questions aren't in by a certain time, you don't get to ask those questions. It's plain and simple. For me, at least, I don't mean to be rude, but I think setting a time limit would help our staff, help our community, and help us as councillors kind of go into our meetings with smiles on their faces and leave with smiles rather than constant frustration of wacky Mondays or wacky Wednesdays. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Madigan. So you've put option 4 on the table with some changes, and I'm not going to look for a seconder at the moment. I'm just going to go around and allow other council members who haven't spoken yet to say their piece, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Madigan, to get the details of the question requirements and timelines, and then we'll look for a seconder. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank staff for their thoughtful analysis of this. I wanted to say that I agreed with Councillor Madigan's view that consistency is important. And I think that if the meetings were Wednesday, then we would know they would always be Wednesday, whether there's a holiday Monday or not. And I think that that would be very helpful. I am also aware that having meetings on Monday is hard for staff, and I can see it because, you know, I see staff are working on Sunday. I can send emails not expecting anyone will reply, and lo and behold, I get a reply. So I know that they're anticipating council meetings and are having to hover around their computer. These are not questions I'm asking about the council meeting. I'm just saying generally they're there. I also wanted to address the issue that Councillor McLeod raised, which was having less time for the agendas. And I have to say, I was quite surprised when I joined this council to find the shortage or the few number of days that we had in advance of the meeting for agendas, because in my experience, in virtually every municipality that I had an opportunity to work with, the agendas were out a week before the meeting. And It gives everyone lots of time to prepare for that meeting. It allows staff to know what's on the agenda. It gives lots of time for the residents to read it and think about whether or not they want to come and say a piece about it. And I don't see any good reason to reduce the number of days that an agenda would come out ahead of the meeting. And if staff, and I see that the proposal would in fact, with Wednesday's meetings, have us get the agendas on Thursday, which anyway, just to me makes good practical sense. I am mindful of Councillor Jeffrey's concerns about her schedules, and I know she's taken on other obligations on committees. But I know that, and I'm sympathetic to that, but I know that her meeting is in November and then not again till March and then I guess September. So there are lots of other meetings and through Zooming calls, perhaps, you know, there'd be some way that she could duck out of that. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the 2 o'clock SIC meeting. I think that is a great idea. If once every 30 days we have a couple-hour meeting, 2 in the afternoon, I think it would relieve our staff from having yet another night meeting. I can't imagine there's any other councils in the province having as many night meetings as we do. So all to say, I'm in support of option number 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm seeing some, or I'm hearing some interesting supports for the status quo as well as for supporting staff with making the move. You know, speaking for myself personally, I am prepared to support whatever schedule works best for staff and for members of this council. But I'm also cognizant that I made a commitment to this community to devote the time that is required to participate in the governance of this community with the rest of my fellow members of council. And that is my priority. The day of the week on which that commitment falls really makes no difference to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, Council, before I go back to Councillor Madigan, who has moved recommendation 4 with some modifications? I will, Councillor Comey has her card up. She has not spoken yet, so go ahead, Councillor Comey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just offer the comment. I really appreciate CAO Skinner taking the time to also share that staff is going to reflect on the timing of our in-camera meetings. Really, it's something that Councillor Hamlin has raised before, and I share that concern. I am concerned about the hour to which these particularly important matters are being taken on. I don't think that our community is getting the best of staff in their important professional input or their counsel when we are going to 11 o'clock at night or later. And I'm not sure why at times it's framed as some sort of professional endurance. I have worked across North America for very important organizations like the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and there was never this sort of stature put on it of who can hang in there with a 4-minute or 6-minute break 7 hours into a meeting. So I'm so glad to hear that CEO Skinner has agreed that staff will look at this as well. I think our community deserves a fresh council coming at the most important issues, either at the beginning of an agenda or as a separate meeting. I think overall, we really have to address the hour to which these meetings are going. And I'm prepared and ready to move forward with the option they've presented with Wednesdays. I think it's reasonable, everything staff has laid out. And I think we should pay attention when staff brings something to us because we're relying on their professional input. And if they feel this is the best way to go, I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do rely on the expert input of our staff, and we have continued, will continue to do that. And we certainly, the majority of this council has relied heavily on staff so far this term. Councillor Madigan, I'm going to ask you to get your wording on the floor, because you had some changes to option 4, and then I will look to the clerk to see if that's a friendly amendment or if we should be voting on that, the timelines for questions, the submission of questions as a separate amendment or as part of the main motion. So Councillor Madigan, maybe you can just outline for us your thoughts on the timeline for submitting questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I would move that we do a cutoff at noon on Monday for questions, and then I await Clerk Almas's response on what the timely manner would be to respond back. But if you don't have it in by noon, with obviously a bit of a grace period left up to staff, then unfortunately the questions can't get in. We need to respect that we all get the agenda on the same day, and we all have personal lives, and we all have business lives, and we all work for the town as hard as we can, but we can't be having questions come in at the last minute because it's unfair to the rest of us to adapt to the addendums that are put forward. So simply scenario 4, maybe move the agendas to being put out on Friday, as Councillor McLeod initiated, and I agree with her wholeheartedly, and then just move forward just to continue the consistency for the town of Collingwood, help the staff and help our residents, which we're all here for. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Madigan. So I took from that 2 amendments or 2 changes to the recommendation. One is the submission of the questions by noon on Monday, and the second was the agendas coming out by 4 or 5 p.m. Friday, as opposed to Thursday. So Sarah, are those friendly amendments, or are they significant enough that they should be voted on separately?
I think, Your Worship, since we've had a varying discussion on them, they should be considered separately. So the main motion being scenario 4, and then dealing with the amendments first.
Okay. So I will look then, and I think Councillor Madigan, you might want to sever those, the 2 separate aspects of your amendments.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. So we have the first amendment being the submission of questions to staff by noon on Monday in the scenario 4. And I will look for a seconder for that, Councillor Madigan. And I will have opportunity for questions or comments on that specific amendment, Council. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Yeah, as soon as the staff report came out, my mind went to along the lines of this amendment that Councillor Madigan made, and I probably jotted down 10 or 12 rules that we should have had, and then I left it alone because I honestly thought that with all the rules I was writing down, and this would have been one of them, that they in effect treated us like children when we should be behaving like adults. We shouldn't need to be this policed. But I will support that, because anything that's going to help stop what has become the norm, I'm in favor of. So, and I don't know if you got a second the motion as well.
Yes, I have you as a seconder.
Okay, thank you.
The motion is on the floor. The amendment is on the floor, which requires council to have questions to staff by noon on Monday, preceding a Wednesday meeting. Are there any other questions or comments, council, before I call the vote? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I have no concern supporting this proposal in principle. I'd like to clarify that from time to time, some exceptional occurrences we may experience some exceptional occurrences that would require us to ask questions later than that date. Is this hard and fast, or are we going to provide flexibility in exceptional circumstances?
I will look to the clerk first, because this would be part of our procedural bylaw. if adopted moving forward. So it sounds to me like a fairly firm cutoff. Clerk Almas.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Doherty and the rest of the members, I would build in some flexibility because obviously you're going to have constituents that are contacting you and may contact you after that noon deadline. So we'll have to word it appropriately. But again, for, extenuating circumstances, we wouldn't expect not to have, some comments come in at a later time.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Comey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose through you to the clerk or the CAO. So what of said question? We have a scenario, a constituent writes in and it's 2 o'clock on Monday, and they would like us to ask about a certain item at committee or standing committee or council. And I'm just wondering what the response would be. I would sure like to help you, dear constituent, but there is a rule where I may not provide this question in a public forum because it is now past noon on Monday. My guess is that our public would very much not be in favor of that response from their elected officials. So could you kindly provide some guidance on how we would deal with that?
Well, I think that's a question, I think, for council, not for staff to really look at how a constituent is going to react to that. I mean, I think your point is taken, but I don't know that it's anything staff would want to weigh in on. But that said, I will open the opportunity to the clerk and to CAO if they have anything to add to that.
I may ask CAO Skinner if she would like to speak to this.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Comey, I think that one of the primary roles of a councillor is in fact to listen to your constituents, and that having received that question or that feedback or that opinion from a constituent closer to the meeting still means that you have it, and you have it to reflect upon at the meeting, and as you provide your votes on an item, or as you might like to provide something like a notice of motion for a future meeting. I think it's a little bit like staff posting a report on a, whatever date council chooses. We often learn something new, or there's a release from the province that provides a bit of new information after we've published for council. But we do abide by the overall, procedures that help us to work well together. So I would say that, subject to a bit of flexibility for extraordinary circumstances, which will arise, that we would, you would have that constituents' feedback as you make your decisions at the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO Skinner. Yeah, it's very concerning to me. I would not want to be in that position. I don't like the idea of a council that's hemmed in and unable to be dynamic and responsive to the needs of the community. I think what everybody's demonstrated is they have good professional judgment. And if there is a particular issue, it should be taken up individually. I don't know why we would want to hem ourselves in and restrict ourselves to all the myriad of scenarios we're going to face. So I'm not in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I think at least it happens to me quite often in our current scenario, and I'm always happy to say to a resident, gee whiz, we missed getting that now, but you know what? We opened up our committee meetings. Love to hear from you. Then you get the whole committee hearing you at once instead of just me. Here's the time. I give them one of our great business cards, and on the back, and I tick off the clerk's direct contact and say, contact the clerk's office. They'll explain everything to you and how you get in, because we really want to hear from you, and that's how I handle it.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Any other? Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I wanted to follow up before I make a comment on what CAO Skinner had said. Seeing as I seconded this this amendment, there's just because the cutoff to email staff and use their time would be one time. That doesn't prohibit asking those questions at the table. I think that's a safe assumption on my part.
Clerk Almas?
That is correct.
And okay, that's great. I obviously do not have the reach, I guess, for lack of a better word, as Councillor Comey does, because in 2 years on this council, I've never been asked a question by a resident that I needed to address with staff prior to a meeting. I give them the town email address if I can't answer it myself. So I'm not familiar with that problem. But I think that this still frees up anything that comes in between that cutoff time, which allows staff and council to do their preparation to just be asked at the table, which we've been doing anyhow. So I'm fine with the wording the way it is.
Look, I see your card, Councillor Madigan, but I'm going to go around the table to see if there anyone else who has not yet spoken on this issue. Seeing none, then I'll go back to you, Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. As per my seconder's wording, that's exactly what I meant. What it does is it frees up staff to continue to get ready for the agenda. And I would never stifle any of us elected officials not to ask a question at the table. But the cutoff just gives a timely response that you'll get a written response from staff, realizing of all the things that they do day to day. But I would have no hesitation to listen to any question at the table that might take a little bit of time to answer. But my motion is to give a steadfast time and to stick to it. And sometimes people have to wait for an answer, unfortunately.
All right, thank you for that. The last comment. And I guess I would add that folks, when we're doing this stuff and I'm going around the table, when I'm asking for last comment, you got to get your cards up. It's not a wait till the bitter end to thrash your card at me. It really, you know, we're talking about efficiency here, and I'm calling votes and I'm seeing yellow cards go up. So that being said, the only time I can really see this being an issue is before a standing committee meeting, because we have 2 weeks between a standing committee meeting and the actual council meeting. So if you have issues and questions about items in the 2 weeks between the standing committee meeting and the committee meeting, I think you can get those on the table. And at least the ones that require written responses from our staff. Now, that being said, I am going to call the vote. And next time, I would ask everyone to get your cards up when I ask for them. All in favor of the amendment on the floor? Opposed? And that is carried. Councillor Madigan, you had a second amendment dealing with the release of the agenda.
Yes, sir. I would just move it that the agendas could go out Friday rather than the day that is being presented to us. It just gives staff an extra day to get it ready and get all the questions that might come from council representatives and from the public to make sure that it's a solid agenda going out on the weekend and gives us the time needed to get our questions in.
All right, thank you for that. And this is an amendment that we're dealing with independently. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Madigan? I see you've got Councillor Berman, and we will then go around the horn for comments on this particular amendment. Councillor Berman, and then I see Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Saunderson. Yeah, I got no issue with this. As some of you know, I've been following agendas for the 6 years prior to getting on council. I don't think it takes a lot of prep time. You know, I get an email from the town at 5 o'clock on a particular day. I think like most of us, I open it, I scroll through it, see if there's anything that jumps out at me that's going to be time consuming. How long, and I can usually tell right away whether I need to put in half an hour or 6 hours of prep time. Having the agenda come out on Friday, I now have Friday evening, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and Monday till noon. If that isn't enough time to prepare your questions for staff, I don't even know what to say to that. So It's plenty of time. That's plenty of time. So that's why I'm seconding and supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Clerk Almas. I can see that your report has recommended that the agenda come out on Thursday. We're now having a discussion without any input from staff about giving you an extra day to get the agenda out. Never mind that this was your suggestion, the heads of departments, that the agenda come out Thursday. So I thought before we get into, my view might be shaped somewhat on what your view would be on when the appropriate time for you to get the agenda out would be. Thank you.
Almas?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Hamlin, the reason why we went with Thursday is it gives a hard, fast deadline for staff as well to get their information in that staff aren't having to stay late on a Friday evening to issue an agenda. So that was basically the background to that rationale.
So as a follow-up through you, Mr. Mayor, so would it be your preference, and I take it then department's head preference, to have the agenda finalized on a Thursday as opposed to a Friday?
Almas?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that what you were saying was that it would be your preference to have the agenda finalized on a Thursday as opposed to a Friday. Is that right?
Certainly, yes, and I will be putting the time frame hammer down as well for staff. But regardless of what the date is, that I would expect through the CAO as well, that we would want to ensure that material is ready to go Thursday. And if there is last minute tweaks, if council decides that they're fine with Friday, that we would still try and have the information. And if it is available Thursday, we would still issue it Thursday. Right now, we're issuing it Wednesday, which is still more than the time frame is required in the procedural bylaw currently.
Thank you. Yes, I won't be supporting the amendment to the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'll support this amendment. I think there's something internal that can go on here as a staffing with our CAO and the clerk. Their staff's input time to this agenda shouldn't be dictated about when it goes out to council. So I think that's something internal that can be addressed so that we don't have staff staying late at the behest of other members of staff, but that it can come out to council on the Friday and staff can do what they need to do. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Comey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I would appreciate some clarification on this discussion. Am I understanding correctly that staff has said they will gladly give us Thursday, but council is saying, no, thank you. We would like less time, give it to us a day later? Am I following this discussion correctly?
Well, I think the discussion is based around our procedural bylaw right now talks about 96 hours to have agendas. And so Thursday was picked, I think, as a date based on what Clerk Almas said, to allow for staff to have it in on the Thursday and not have anyone late working on the Friday. But what I'm hearing from some council members is that the 96 hours is sufficient and they're comfortable with that.
Okay, but staff has recommended this, and if anything, the upside is it gives us even more time. So I'm very comfortable with what staff has recommended. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Berman, you've already spoken, so I'm going to go around and see if anyone else wants to speak who hasn't yet spoken, and then I'll come back. Is there anyone who has not yet spoken who would like to speak? All right, Councillor Berman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I want to sort of support something that Councillor Hamlin and Councillor Comey addressed. Some of the people around the table might remember a municipal training by Fred Dean a few years back, where he did an anecdote about a first-term councillor that came to him and said, "I don't feel like I'm doing my job because all I'm doing is approving staff reports." And I see you smiling, you may remember this one. And Mr. Dean said that, yeah, you are doing your job. because staff are the experts. So I, as a blanket statement, agree with Councillor Hanlon and Councillor Comey that I'd be happy if we approved all staff recommendations, not just the ones that suit our narrative. So I'll be happy to leave it at that.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments in council before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. So that brings us back to the main motion then, which is to have all meetings on Wednesdays, with SIC meetings starting at 2 p.m. and council meetings starting at 5 p.m. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunders. Just a recorded vote, please.
All right. Duly noted by the clerk. Are there any other questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, then I'll pass it over to Clerk Almas.
Certainly, a recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your yes cards. Thank you. And all those opposed, please raise your no card. Perfect. Thank you. Motion is carried.
Thank you. And this brings us to item 7, the departmental updates. And 7.1 is the Collingwood Judicial Inquiry Report update. CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I it's mostly a verbal update given the time frame since we've received the report, but I did, just to make it easier for folks, put together with some help from Jocelyn McCauley and the clerk a couple of visual aids. So just as we're here on the cover slide, I wanted to set the tone a little bit more for the people who are watching than council, who's very aware of this, but the town did ask for this inquiry. It's ours. It's very relevant to the people who live here and the businesses that we have in our town. It shines a light on a number of actions and communications by parties that would otherwise never have been known. And I think it shows us that we're on the right path and how to keep moving on that path. And I would suggest that anyone who's at all interested in learning a little more, look on the Collingwood Judicial Inquiry website and read the brief overview. It's less than 20 pages in the first volume that sets out the story of the events that led up to the inquiry. I do echo the thanks from Mayor and Council to Justice Morocco and his team. And I wanted to further recognize the efforts of our own staff who spent hundreds of hours preparing and sorting documents, and our own council members, and even those members of the public who followed the story and attended the judicial inquiry either in person or virtually. The Justice had some pretty significant findings. If you haven't heard them, there were things like unfair bidding and procurement practices, conflicts of interest, inaccurate and misleading town council reports, misuse and inappropriate disclosure of the town's confidential information, inaccuracies, and a failure to respect the roles and responsibilities of council members and staff. And he noted that these, if unaddressed, would undermine the foundational core and reputation of a municipal government. So the entire report doesn't end at the first 20 pages. It's about 900 pages. And staff are still reviewing it in detail. And even myself, I haven't waded through all of the volumes in full detail at this point. But staff do understand that council would like staff to review it in detail and bring forward a report on what we can do that's costed and specific. And we are doing that. If there is input from council, individual council members or the public that draws our attention to particular items of interest that could be helpful, that would be welcome. On slide 2, you can take a look through the recommendations. There's 306 of them. It's a diverse set of subjects. I was quite surprised at how easy to understand the recommendations are. And they're all worded very, very clearly, and they're in little chunks of things that need to be done. So the breakdown here, these are actually the titles that the justice and his team provided. Things like 28% of the 300 plus recommendations were about procurement practices, a number about lobbying, and they were a number of them that dealt with the integrity commissioner, for example. We could go to the next slide, please. So in looking at the recommendations, we did a quick sort and took a look at who is recommended to act. And the simple pie chart gives just a visual representation on the left side of the slide. So there's a number of recommendations that are relatively profound for the province that relate to updating their regulations and legislation, largely the Municipal Act with some overlap into other things. And the remainder are for municipalities, including Collingwood. The municipal pieces also include some that could be dealt with by the province if they were looking to apply those recommendations to a broader set of municipalities. So I was really actually quite pleased when I saw the recommendations that applied to Collingwood, the 141 of those 306 at our quick first count. This could change by a few numbers as we go through it in more detail. But I think that council and staff have worked together to strengthen a 21st century organizational culture with a nonpartisan public service founded on ethics and integrity, and that every single member of the organization understands, they're trained on, council is trained on. So we have the 141 that are complete. There's another 63 that are substantially complete, pushing us up over 200 of the recommendations. There's 41 that we have not, that are incomplete or we weren't aware would come forward. And a couple of examples of those are things like asking the integrity commissioner to meet with each member of council annually. That's something that's always been available to council members, but we haven't explicitly, for example, enacted that a meeting of that type happen with each council member. And there was other things such like, putting the job description responsibilities and accountability of the CAO into an explicit bylaw or another very public mandatory commitment. So while that exists, it isn't as public as the judicial inquiry and the justice would have wished it. Are a number of things that don't apply to us, but did apply to us in 2012. So the recommendations around municipally owned corporations, there's 32 of those that when we own, for example, the public utility, would have been quite useful. But at this point, we don't own anything, so we are not going to act on those, but they may be useful to many of the other 443 municipalities across Ontario who do have that type of municipal corporation. And there's about 20 of them I mentioned previously that are for the province. And could I go next slide, please? And that brings me to a few of the stakeholders and partners that will be consulting the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We'd like to engage with and have started some conversations at the assistant deputy minister level, and I think there may be some at the political levels as well, particularly those who are engaged with municipal governance. We've had requests to meet with the Ministry of the Attorney General and our local MPP, Jim Wilson. I have had some conversations with the OPP, and they have assured me that they absolutely have a copy of the report and are reading the report and looking into it. I said if there was any information required that the municipality could provide, then we could work with them however is needed. Pending their availability, the previous CAOs, John Brown and Farida Min, who supported council in calling for the judicial inquiry and then managed the administrative side of the town through the inquiry, I believe will have insights that are useful to you. And as well, we are setting up meetings to meet and have asked both our Judicial Inquiry Legal Counsel and our General Legal Counsel to review the report and look at next steps that may be recommended for council. And I would remind more the public listeners that a judicial inquiries help governments to examine issues and problems outside a regular legislative process. But they are not criminal trials, and there are separate processes through the OPP or even civil courts that could be warranted depending on the advice that we receive. And I'm in no way saying that they are warranted. We certainly do not know enough, but we will just make sure that town council has the information that it needs to examine all the options. And the final slide is the timing for the report back. As we read this, we will provide any updates to committees and council immediately if there are some time pressures existing. However, I believe it will be at least the December meeting of the Strategic Initiatives Committee and potentially even January for the return to council with a full review that includes the resources recommendations and timelines. And following council's agreement, we do intend to provide a series of public updates and engage the public and businesses locally for their input as we move forward as a full community. And that's it for tonight's update. And I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia, for that update on this important issue. Clerk Almas, I'm not sure if generally we provide an opportunity for public input on departmental updates.
We have in the past. It's your call regarding this. We do have 2 participants now wishing to speak.
Okay, well, this is an important issue, so let's have them address council, please.
All right, we will invite Matthew Pretty in.
Yes, council, calling to, well, being present because there is a transition happening, and I'd like to just state for the record that some persons who are with town council may not have had the education and the past association to see standards of certain methods of negotiation. I think Collingwood's always been this sort of island community where a lot of people have come to the table from industrial, investor, development, points of interest. And I guess when you mix business with municipal affairs, it becomes a bit of a rocky boat. And I think that's really the boat we've been on for a long time. I remember a lot of violence downtown years ago, people fighting each other and assaults and drugs and vagrancy and a lot of bad energy downtown. And I would like to say the town has cleaned up a lot, and I just want to say that violence, okay, this is the violence we talked about during the inquiry. It was a form of violence. That's what was talked about. And that was the energy that we came from the industrial times, the shipbuilding times. People seriously would put the fear in each other for years and years and years. And I just want to say this, that the openness and the inclusion is very important, and obviously in a timely way, but this town has gone through a lot of violence in the past, and we need to talk about that because that's not the town we want to be. And we've come through colonial violence as well. So it's all fine and dandy to make everything bright and beautiful, but there has been a lot of violence, a lot of colonial violence, especially in this town. And it's time to put a stop to that. And we need to acknowledge that. A lot of violence, a lot of violence. And that's what that $7 million inquiry did. It rebought the town hall. We own it again. We took it back. And that's what's gone on. And nobody sees that. But I do. And I damn well know. I know.
Thank you, Matthew. Sarah, we had another member that would like to speak.
Worship, we have Tim Fryer, so we will allow him to speak.
Mr. Fryer, go ahead.
Mayor Saunderson, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, I actually had some prepared comments, but I think with the amount of information that CEO Skinner has put out, I'm going to forego those. I'm just going to ask, could she elaborate on what she feels the staff report will include that will be coming to council? And also, she made reference to the fact that public will be engaged. So are you talking about having like a specific strategic initiatives committee meeting or special council meeting where the report will be presented and there will be the opportunity for the public to speak about the matter?
CEO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Fryer. I expect that the staff, not having written it yet, I expect that the staff report, when it does come forward, will include an attachment that addresses each of the 306 recommendations and their current status, and potentially also talks about groupings of those recommendations and what would happen next. I expect that for most, we'll either have acted on them, be able to say when we will act on them into 2021, or whether we need to do some study moving forward and how soon that would happen. So that's what I'm anticipating will be in the staff report. Given that we'll also be talking with our legal counsel, there's possibility that there may be a legal strategy discussion that would likely happen in a closed session. But to the extent that it is possible, the full report and all of the opportunities would be included in the open session staff report back. I'd also like to, if we can, get the status from the province on what may be happening and when. I'm not sure. I think that the OPP would likely be acting independently, and I don't anticipate that there'll be any new information from the policing side that would come through our town staff report. With respect to the engagement of the public, I think this is at this point simply a philosophical intention. Definitely, I think that there's a lot to this report, and I would be thinking that we would most likely have a series of either press releases or public meetings where we dealt with certain pieces of the report, potentially also using our wonderful Collingwood.ca engage portal, so that we could talk, for example, procurement in one session and potentially lobbying in another, for example, in bite-sized chunks that would make sense to the staff presenting them, council, and the public who and businesses who may like to provide comment. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Sonia.
Could I ask a subsequent Mayor Saunderson?
Well, you can put it on the floor, Mr. Fryer. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess all I was thinking of what CEO Skinner has explained is that this is all about going forward as far as the staff report goes. And I had hoped to hear that there would be some sort of summary about the background to what's going on and the costs and more detail about costs, any of the control mechanisms that were utilized, or budgeting background and such. I think it's important that there's a summary report. I think it will help avoid outstanding questions about the inquiry itself going forward. So that was one of the suggestions I was going to be making in my planned comments. I think that the report should be all-encompassing.
We'll certainly take that into consideration, and certainly all of the costs for this judicial inquiry have been paid and are up to date, and last year's audited financial statements included $5.5 million of those costs. So we will certainly be making all aspects of this public, and the costs are public as it stands now. So I thank you for that. Okay, Council, are there questions or comments for CAO Skinner on her presentation? Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you. I would like to express to CAO Skinner my thanks. You have answered pretty much every question that I wanted answered in those very short slides, especially considering that we no longer own any corporations. So I think it's kind of great that we can say, hey, look, we already did 41 of them, because we don't have those that sort of Damocles hanging over us any longer. I do want to make a comment to my fellow council members, and that is that that this is not just read at 3 in the morning to put yourself to sleep kind of stuff, although that is how I tried to employ it the other day, and instead ended up reading for hours and hours and hours and hours. It is a fascinating read and a deeply disturbing one, and I really encourage all of us to delve into it as much as we possibly can, and if only to skim the recommendations 17 through 63, which pertain to our role that we have been asked to fill by the people of this town. And so I think that that part is pretty important. And I also want to talk about the fact that when I was reading, and I haven't completed it actually, but I'm very far in. And I was struck by the fact that Justice Morocco, in his review or in his report, said, and this is one of the highest standing justices in Ontario, said at a minimum 75 times, because I've started to write them down. It struck me so often, how often he said that he did not accept the testimony that was given by some of the people who were testifying. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there are two lawyers sitting at this in this panel. When a justice says that they do not accept what a testifier or what the testimony that is coming forward, that is not great for the person providing the testimony. That tells me that they are obfuscating or outright lying. And when a justice says that you're outright lying, I think that's a pretty big deal. And so I think that it behooves us all to read this and to see what is actually there, and to absorb it, and to make sure we all think through how we can move forward so that nothing like this ever happens again. Thank you. You're muted.
The curse of Dave Orling. Well said, Councillor MacLeod. And this is a very significant report for our community, and it is a report that belongs to our community, and we owe it to them to pursue every aspect of it. Councillor Berman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I hadn't planned to say anything, but something occurred to me during the CAO's presentation. So I just want to say, to get it on the record, that the new people around the table, and the deputy mayor's not here tonight, we ran knowing that this was coming. We didn't know what was coming, but we volunteered to take this role anyhow. And I was thinking that that's similar to CAO Skinner when she took the executive director job. She knew that this was hanging over there, although I'm sure she'd be the first one to admit she had no idea the size of the scope of it. And it dawned on me that 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, I don't remember, she volunteered, knowing this was coming, to step up and become our full-time CAO. And it was a unanimous approval by this council to hire her for that position. And I don't know the right words. I think that speaks volumes to her character, willing to take this on, knowing that this was coming, knowing that this is a legacy issue. The only word I can think of is impressive. I know we all feel this way around the table, and I hope that in time the residents come to see what we've already seen. Words fail me, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Sonia, CEO Skinner, how do you respond to that?
Thank you, Your Worship, but I'm not quite sure exactly how to respond, but I am committed, and I know that the rest of the senior management team is also committed to supporting council very, very well in this issue and others. And I hope that the people who are in the town will find that we represent their needs well also. So thank you. I'll go home, and I hope the whole senior management team will go home quite motivated this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I think that brings us to item 8, public delegations. Sarah, do we have anyone that wants to speak? Councillor Berman?
Sorry, 7.2, or did I miss something?
Oh, you didn't miss something, I did.
Okay.
Sorry, Council, that takes us to item 7.2, review of standing committee appointments. Clerk Almas.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So just to confirm, we polled all members of council and we received no request to change standing committees.
Okay, and I see in parenthesis here, it says motion may be required. Do we require a motion?
Not now.
All right, then, thank you. All right, well, then that brings us to item 8, public delegations.
Certainly. So again, this section is opened up in the agenda to allow the attendees up to a maximum of 5 minutes to speak to an item related to the Strategic Initiative Committee mandate. And at this point, no one wishes to speak during this section.
Sorry, did you say no one?
No, nobody.
Okay, all right, my apologies. All right, well, then that brings us to adjournment. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clerk Almas indicated earlier today that I could have a few minutes at the end of the meeting. And it was just really to recognize one of our amazing residents, Robin Heald, who has been busy during the pandemic making masks for anybody who might need them. And how she knows if people need them is she hangs them on a tree in front of her house, and people come by and they take them. So anyway, Robin reached out to me earlier in the week and asked if she could make some masks out of poppy material and whether council and staff might like them. So I said, of course they would. So I picked them up from her home today. And so they have been put one in each of your mailboxes, and there's enough for any staff who might like one as well. Of course, when I asked her, she didn't want any thanks, but she did want me to mention that there's no poppy boxes out this year. So if people have a mind to donate to the Legion, which she's very fond of, you donate to president@collingwoodlegion.ca. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and thank you to Ms. Heald for those wonderful masks. All right, we snuck that one for other business. And Councillor Berman, you've opened up Pandora's box. Go ahead, Councillor.
No. I just, I don't even want to go into details. There are poppy boxes out. In fact, I think one was dropped off to Town Hall Monday, but maybe the clerk can confirm that.
Sarah?
My apologies. I can't confirm for sure, but we can let council know.
Okay. Thank you. And for town residents, if you want to come and buy a poppy, you can do it here at Town Hall. All right, Councillor Jeffrey, I'll look for your motion. Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.